Okay. I'm so thrilled to welcome Barbara Stewart, Global Researcher of Women in Finance, to share more about women in alts, a global perspective. Barbara is a CFA hailing from Toronto. Thank you. You actually flew in from the south of France. We are very jealous. Is a global powerhouse with over 33 years in the investment industry, with a career spanning 5 years as a foreign currency trader, more than 2 decades as a portfolio manager for high net worth entrepreneurs, and the past 8 years conducting groundbreaking interview-driven research. What I love about Barbara is it's qualitative. Barbara has been one of the world's leading voices on women in finance. Her mission to shatter outdated stereotypes and amplify positive narratives about women and their financial power. Thank you.
Well, it's an amazing honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me, the 51. And I used to say, as a global researcher, everything with women happens in the Nordics and nothing happens in Canada. There's no movements. And guess what? Here we are. This will rival anything I've seen in Scandinavia. So it's really wonderful for me to participate in this, because honestly, there isn't much else going on in Canada that I've seen. So congratulations, Shelley and team. And I noticed she's attracting all the heavy hitters like Colleen and Lauren and everyone. So this is a really, really big deal, and I'm just honored to be part of it. So thank you. So I'm going to tell you a few things. Let's see. Where am I? Oh, I'm going backwards? So I'm really smart, but not at stuff like this. Yeah, I've had a great career, but I've never been able to figure out that. This is why I always rehearse with the thing, and even then I don't get it right. So I don't know. There we go. And now which way do I go? Okay, perfect. Thank you for your patience. So this is the most recent research report that I released. It was commissioned by a private equity firm in Canada, and I'll tell you more about that after I explain why I'm doing this global research in the first place. I'm being told to move over here. Perfect. Okay, so 15 years ago, I was working as a money manager in the high net worth business in Toronto. And I was sitting at my desk during the financial crisis, and I was picking up the phone a lot with panicky people. And it was the low in the market, March 2009, like the day before the low of the market. And I got 7 panicky phone calls, and they were all from men. And I remember thinking, I was already depressed because nobody wanted to talk to me. They were losing money like everyone. And I remember thinking, well, why are these men calling me and not my women clients? And the women were like, if they did call, they were like, how are you doing, Barbara? What a horrible time. How are you feeling? Poor you, having to work through this. And the men were like, get me out, liquidate everything. And so I went home that night. By the way, I did get them all to sleep on it, and that was the toughest job I ever had. Not one of them cashed out, thank God, and they all did thank me later. But I went home and thought about it that night, and I thought, what the hell? There's all these stereotypes about women being risk averse, yet my women clients seem to be very calm and in control. And so I noticed there was this huge disconnect between what I read on bank websites, on research houses' websites about all these myths about women not being interested in investing, deferring their authority to male investors, just being a risk averse, all of that. And I thought, this isn't true. My women investors are strong and capable. So what are we going to do about this? It just became a stark realization to me that there's something wrong, and that I didn't want to leave those negative stereotypes for the next generation of women investors. So I went for a long run, and I usually run every day, and I came into my head that the best way to counter negative stereotypes would be to share positive stories and very successful women, interview them, and have them share. So I decided to interview 50 super successful women around the world and write one research paper. I was just going to write one. And I think Colleen was in my first one. We were just talking about that. I haven't seen her since 2012, so it's great to see you again. And what happened was, I did that idea, and I was still working my day job as a money manager, released it on International Women's Day, and somebody in the Nordics saw it online. I didn't even have it on social media at the time. This is a long time ago. And this woman called me from Sweden and said, I'm with the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, and we like your positive messages. We've been wanting gender equality for ages here, and we think this would be a good presentation at our ladies' night at the exchange. Can we fly you over business class? And I said, well, let me think about that. So yeah, I went there, and they had a ladies' night at the exchange for 2,500 women, and I presented this only research report I'd ever done. And then it was so fun. They just had champagne and hors d'oeuvres and whatever. And I was just saying, like, just go out and buy a stock. Just get started investing if you haven't already started. And so then they said, okay, this was so fun. Let's do it in all the other Nordic cities. And then, as Shelley mentioned, I'm a CFA charter holder. CFA Institute decided they liked the paper, so then they sent me all around the world. So anyway, long story short, I was so encouraged by these 50 women that I interviewed that I decided to do this every year, a one report, and release it on International Women's Day. And 15 years later, here I am. I quit my job along the way because I couldn't keep up with both things, so now I'm just a researcher, not a money manager. This was probably the stereotype that irked me the most. It was the stereotype that irked me the most because I just knew it wasn't true. So I recoined this, that women aren't risk averse, women are risk aware. And we can talk a lot more about that, but language is so important, as you know, that risk averse implies that women are these meek, mild creatures that don't do anything and are scared like this. But women are risk aware means it's an incredibly positive skill set that we should celebrate. And we need women to be investors and founders because we're risk aware, because this is an incredible skill. I tried to prove this by doing some quantitative work. The only year I did a quantitative study during the pandemic, actually, I interviewed 2,000 women around the world. And I broadened the categories because I realized one of the reasons so many surveys give us this old information is that we only give them choices like, are you conservative or moderate? And women, we tend to be self-deprecating, so we're not going to brag. So if you broaden the categories and you give them more choices, and I gave some descriptions about each one of these, I found out if you put it that way, fewer than 10% of women will actually say they're risk averse. So it just proved the point. And then even more proof, this is very recent information from Gallup. We did come by those negative stereotypes honestly if you assume that risk is equal to volatility in the market or something like that, and how much you have invested in the equity market. 30 or 40 years ago, women did have a huge gap with men as equity investors. Women had 40% in the equity market versus 60% of men were investing in it. It was a huge gap, so that's why people thought women were risk averse. But as you can see, this gap has been narrowing incredibly, especially expedited during the pandemic when we had more time on our hands to actually get started investing. And I'm so happy to tell you, because I don't think a lot of people know this, the most recent Gallup data shows that women are in green here. 63% of women, this is US data, are equity investors versus 62% of men. So guess what? Public equity market, women are actually out investing men now. Did you know that? Nobody's publicizing this. Nobody writes about that. So now to get into the alts thing and why I want to talk about alts, the year before last, I did this research study where I asked 50 men and women around the world, I like to do half men, half women, what's in your investment portfolio today? What's actually in your investment portfolio? And I found out something very interesting, which was, if you look at the alternative asset classes, men had double the allocation, this is globally, men had double the allocation to alts. I was shocked. I had no idea why that was. That would require another report, which I just did. But I wanted to explore that because we know, this is pre-Quinn data research here, that alternative assets globally are expected to grow by another half by 2028. This is massive. And we know that they are the highest returns available and lower risk and all of that reduced correlation. So why shouldn't women have access to this asset class and why don't they? So to figure that out, I did a commissioned report for this private equity firm, as I mentioned, and I suggested that we interview 50 finance leaders from around the world, so all different countries, and I asked diverse people, academics, institutional salespeople, CEOs, portfolio managers, economists, you name it, to get a really broad idea of what was going on in the space and why did men have double the exposure. Well, I found out along the way that the top 10 alts of interest to women are these. And most importantly, I found out that actually alts are of great interest to women. It's not that women aren't interested in alternative assets. The top 3 sectors of interest to women right now are healthcare, which probably doesn't surprise anyone here. And this actually surprised me, that the defense sector, which used to be considered, of course, a sin stock along with alcohol and tobacco and companies with strange reputational issues, defense is now flipped. It's had a rebrand, if you will, because of all of the world circumstances that we're living in. Women are most interested in protecting our families, protecting ourselves. And the third one that's really going gangbusters, as we know from sneakers and handbags and everything else, is collectibles. So I'll share a few things that some of these finance leaders around the world told me last year. Angela Holter is the founding partner of something similar to the 51, actually. And she was inspired by a campaign that was held in Norway by one of the banks called She Invests. And they did that because they were also curious about why women weren't investing as much and what was behind that. So they wanted to put the conversation on the table. And then she founded this firm as well. And she said, importantly, while women will always have a filter and want to do good and invest in causes and concerns that really matter to them, we also want to make money. And that's really important. Sriram Prakash is global head of M&A in the UK with Deloitte, and he said his data, global data again, shows that female investors are more active in life sciences, biotech, lifestyle, wellness, and healthcare. We care. And so the other thing is, wherever I went around the world, there were nuances based on regulations, politics, what was going on. So not everybody had the same issues with alternative assets, so I'm just sharing some of them. This one I found really striking, which was that Jaewon is a young woman who's now chief portfolio strategist in Seoul, Korea. She, 2 years ago, had a fairly junior position. And something amazing happened, generative AI. She was probably the smartest person working in the firm, and everybody knew it, but her English language skills weren't that great, so she was never getting promoted. And then she decided to use Gen AI. She could write perfect English on all her communications. She's now had 2 huge promotions within the firm. And as she said, this trend makes everybody equal. And I think that I know one of the focus areas with the 51 is work and investing in work. And of course, AI and work, we're going to see more women catapult like that. Thank you. So I asked what's not working. Why are we not seeing women investing in alternative assets? And I found out there were 3 main reasons. One, probably not surprising to you, alts are opaque. We're not explaining it in a language that women understand necessarily. The network effect is really low for women. With men, they'll all go along with whatever because oh, you're doing it? Okay, I'm in, count me in. They won't even do their due diligence. They'll just trust their friend. Women are less likely to do that. We want to do our due diligence. And then, of course, there's still globally a lot of this men in suits kind of thing. Caroline Miller's an independent board director in Montreal, and she said, you know, it really requires a deeper dive. And the problem that we have is that in the investment industry today with the advisor-client relationship, most advisors are not educated in this way to explain all of this stuff or take the time. They're not incented to take the time. Women will take twice as long because we really want to understand what's going on. And why shouldn't we understand what's going on before we make an investment? Sophie is a co-founder of a risk management firm in Stockholm, and she said they're still showing the typical ads of men in suits in Stockholm today. I see it everywhere when I go around, and that's a missed opportunity, obviously. So how do we attract? What's working well globally is when companies and advisors actually take the time to explain the product effectively. And these women's forums events, these work. There's a reason we're doing this. Do more of it. This is actually effective. And thirdly, it's generational. So if we have the younger generation, we want to be social first, absolutely. And even with the older generation, it's now social first too. We're seeing the success of that. Stephanie Leung just started this platform called Stashaway in Hong Kong because in that culture, cash is still 50% of anyone's investment portfolio, or 50% of investors are still holding cash. It's just a thing, so there's a massive opportunity there. But she said 40% of their client base is women, and Gen Z even higher at 51. So they're holding tons of women's events and getting tons of questions. It's a model that works. Blair is a CFA charter holder in the US with Ritholtz, and she said women are joiners, that they want to talk in groups. That's what we want to do. And women even want to pool money to invest because we'll operate on a system of trust if we understand what we're investing in and why. Sylvester he's now been promoted. He's head of European markets for NASDAQ in Denmark and globally. And he talked about how with women especially, they want to know if it's a private equity fund, what's the company actually doing? What's the story behind it? Where is my money going to go? I want a relationship to that investment opportunity. I want to understand where my money's going. And I think I'm going to close on this and then we're going to have a little chat, Shelley and I. But Carolyn, again, this was probably like the best thing I heard in the whole year that really struck me of this research. That women's need for greater explanation of alts is down to the industry's shortcomings, not women's inability to comprehend them, right? Okay, thank you. Oh, by the way, please connect with me because I'm a global researcher and all I want is information about what do people want me to research. I'm here to serve you guys and women in particular. So please connect and send me any ideas you have for research. Thank you.
Okay, that was awesome. I know we're already running over because that's what we do. We're so excited. We just keep filling the time and talking. And your research is fantastic. I love it. Like Colleen, I participated in the research years ago. Okay, so you've kind of talked about the existing landscape. I'd love to hear your version of the future. What does it look like? No, but like you've got all of this institutional research. It's highly qualitative, which I love. So maybe I'd like to break it down into two questions. It would be like, how do you see the future unfolding? We're in a massive decade, 2030, wealth transfer, women are in their financial power. So what do you see for the future?
Thank you. Well, let me just look at the past for a second, just for context, because when I started all of this back in 2012, I was like a lone wolf with this positive messaging, and a lot of people said to me, like, what are you talking about? That can't be true. Wouldn't all the banks be saying the same thing or whatever? And I just felt so passionate and strongly I had to keep doing it, and luckily I was independent, so I was able to do whatever I wanted. And of course, from that time, not just because of me, the whole world shifted, and a lot of people started to think that maybe we should have some positive messaging about women. And then we got all kinds of social platforms, groups, networks all over the world. So it just exploded. And again, the pandemic really, really, really helped that cause. So we've seen how fast things can change. And sitting here today, is it perfect? No, but there's a huge amount of awareness now. And I think that nobody would say that women, I don't think they would say all of the same level of stereotypes that we said when I started this research. Very recently, I had a wonderful opportunity to meet Gloria Steinem, who's now 91. The Milken Institute invited me to attend one of her talking circles in her apartment. So we had heads of different financial institutions in the US, and again, I was the only independent invited, so it was a real honor. And she asked each one of these women, there were 12 women, what we can do to help women's finances in the US, basically in retirement. And I said the most important thing was countering negative stereotypes. I still believe that. And that is what Gloria Steinem, who is my role model from earlier on, has been doing her entire life. So there will always be a need for this. I'm not kidding about that. But to answer your question about the future, I think obviously because of AI and that little story about the woman in South Korea, I think that's very telling. And I think that we will see this shift way, way faster than any of us think. And I think that you might achieve your goal faster than any of us think, because we're onto something, and there's a ton of money, obviously. Women have a ton of money. We're all earning more, whether it's through our salaries, our bonuses, our stock options. We're gonna sell our businesses. There's a lot of money, so we're gonna decide what to do with that. And I think, I just think that we're probably not gonna need the 51 5 years from now, but I think we're gonna still want the 51 because we all wanna be in community together.
Love it. I think that's a great way to finish your talk and our questions, and we'll get the schedule back on track. But Barbara, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and your experience, and it's very inspiring. And yes, we are on a mission. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.